These guys survived the David Kahn era of Timberwolves basketball and live to tell about it. It's Flagrant Howls.
Okay, hello, I am Phil Mackey. This is the sports dad, Judd Zulgad. We are live inside Target Center right now at the scene of the crime. A Game 3, 117-90, absolute thrashing at the hands of the defending champion, Denver Nuggets. A lot to get into here. Appreciate you guys spending part of your Friday night with us. If you stuck through that second half and all the garbage time toward the end, just to hear us talk about what happened tonight, we appreciate you. Flagrant Howls, live from Target Center. Let me start. There's so much to sift through here, but let me just ask you this, okay? Sports dad. You've seen a lot of Minnesota sports playoff failures. You did see the 1991 and 1987 Twins championships. You've been through a lot more playoff runs in your life than myself and a lot of people maybe consuming this podcast. Was tonight's loss to the Nuggets something to panic about? Oh my gosh, the series has officially turned. The Nuggets figured something out, and now it's going to be Nuggets in 6, Nuggets in 7? Or was tonight's loss just part of the ebbs and flows of a playoff series, a marathon, 2-month period of playoffs in which you are facing the defending champions, and they did wake up for the first time? What is your level of panic here? Give us some perspective.
I'm a guy who loves to panic, as you and Patrick Royce, but you know what? I've not only seen like the Twins in 87 and 91, but as a fan in the 80s, I saw the North Stars make playoff runs and go through this, and they would win a game big against the Blackhawks, and then they would get smoked. What I would say is this. First of all, the Wolves swept the Suns in 4. Then they won the first 2 games in Denver. The second one, they drubbed them. The first one, they won by 7 points. It could have been more. I think what it did, and I mean, we're all guilty of this to a certain degree, but I think it set up an unrealistic expectation of where this series was going to be. Yep. We talked about this, and I mean, Sports Dad did try to warn you. The series like this are usually not easy. Now, did the Wolves come out and have a clunker? Absolutely. Did the Wolves play as well as they could have from a shooting standpoint? Not even close. From a defensive standpoint, not close. Is this, to use your words, the ebb and flow of what potentially is going to be a long series? And keep in mind, still, you've got another home game on Sunday, and you lead 2-1. Absolutely. Absolutely. Could this be a wake-up call? Absolutely. Because you've had for 4 days now, not us, screw us, the national guys, the Kendrick Perkinses, right? The Michael Wilbons.
He's been on the wagon all year, actually, Kendrick.
Yeah, but I mean, you've had the Michael Wilbons, the Stephen A. Smiths, and I know you all might laugh about this, but I mean, that's what these guys watch, saying that this is a championship team and that it could win the championship. So is this a slap of reality? Absolutely. But I saw, and we talked about this, Phil, sitting side by side here tonight at Target Center. A lot of people are jumping off the bandwagon during a 2-1 series lead. I would say that if you're jumping off the bandwagon right now, then you aren't necessarily prepared for what this really is.
Yes. I think on one hand, this was definitely the worst the Wolves have played by a mile in the playoffs. I mean, they've played 6 of their best games of the year, sweeping Phoenix and 2 against Denver. So there are things to criticize the Timberwolves for. They got smoked on the boards tonight. I thought they were forcing a lot of three-pointers early that just didn't really make sense, especially with the size advantage the Wolves seemed to have getting into the paint. Anthony Edwards was settling for a lot of bad shots. It did feel like a team that maybe leaned into the positive press a little too much over the last 3 or 4 days. Denver, meanwhile, was like Rocky Balboa in Rocky III coming back from the training with Apollo Creed, coming back from the Clubber Lang beatdown, right? Just let's go into a cave for 4 days and figure out how to fix this thing and conquer the opponent. So, and we'll get to some of these things. There's plenty of things to criticize the Wolves for. But to your point, this is the playoffs, man. Did we really think the Timberwolves We're going to sweep through the Western Conference? Did we really think the Nuggets, the defending champion Nuggets with the most valuable player in the league, were just going to roll over and get smoked by 25 points at Target Center tonight? It's not really surprising that the team playing for its season, the team that won the championship a year ago, decided to show up, show some pride, make some adjustments, get more physical. Now, I thought the referees, Tony Brothers and his crew, definitely called a tighter game than we saw in Denver in Game 2. And the tighter the officiating, the less physical the Wolves can play and get away with on defense. But Denver, before garbage time, before all the subs came in with like 5 or 6 minutes to go, shot 60% from the field. And I think it was, are these screens still on here? At one point, they were like 57% from three-point range before the subs came in.
Yes.
And now were they getting more open looks than they did in the first couple of games because they were moving the ball around? Jamal Murray was doing more Jamal Murray things tonight, having 4 days to rest that calf. Now he's going to get less than 48 hours, so we'll see how it responds in Game 4. But, like, when you're facing defending champion, on the ropes, fighting for their lives, MVP, and they shoot 60% before garbage time and 57% from three-point range, sometimes that's how it works in basketball, and you're going to lose. But the Wolves are still up 2-1. They still maintain home court advantage in this series. If they win Game 4 at home and Game 6 at home, they win the series. They could also just win back-to-back games because the few times they did get their asses kicked in the regular season, they bounced back pretty reliably. It wasn't a team that had a bunch of losing streaks throughout the season. So they find answers pretty quickly. I don't know. My panic level, it's not 0, but it's certainly not. It's like a 2.5. Tip your cap, man. Denver woke up, defending champions.
If the Wolves come out and lay an egg on Sunday, then go ahead and panic. Then something's gone wrong. But this series, if you look at the first 3 games thus far, has also just been a weird one. So the Wolves win the first game by 7. Okay. Pretty normal basketball game. Mm-hmm. The Wolves win the second game at Denver by 26. Denver wins tonight by 27. So I do think Sunday is going to be a really telling game. But, you know, the coach of Denver, Mike Malone, said after that game, to embarrassment, basically said, we are the world champions.
Yeah.
So let's play like it. And tonight, they did. And the Wolves have some things to clean up. Let's briefly touch on officiating because I know that we saw a lot of complaints about that, and they were going to. There was no question. If you were surprised that they called tonight's game tighter than Game 2, you don't really pay attention to this league. They were going to call it, and I'm sure Denver called and complained. I'm sure they said, you know, we got star players. What are you doing here? And so tonight Jokic got away with more. There were definitely times because he basically, it's funny, when he draws fouls, he usually fouls before he draws the foul, and it does not get called. Yeah. But that being said, I don't think tonight was an officiating game. It can be disheartening, but look at Game 2. The Nuggets melted down. Like, it can't be an excuse of, well, we got so pissed off, we just melted down and lost by 20. So the officiating, yes, it's going to play a role, and the different crews are going to play a role every single game. So, like, let's get used to that. I find the officiating thing, because it's such an easy excuse to, like, let your team off the hook. So, like, let's just accept that. The officiating is going to play a role in every single game, and how you process that and handle it becomes the most important thing. But all of that being said, I think when you look at how the Nuggets shot tonight, and, you know, the one thing that we've talked about continually on the postseason flagrant howl shows so far had been through 6 games. The Timberwolves have played a style of defensive basketball that was outstanding and sustainable. Tonight they didn't sustain it. Like, they just didn't. And Denver, credit to them, they played a really good game, and they did shoot the lights out. But, you know, this was, and it's going to happen at times, and the question is it going to happen again? This was the first time, Phil, that since the playoffs started, that the Wolves had a defensive game where they just didn't play well. And so, like, to me, that's forget the officiating. Can you come back on Sunday? And it doesn't mean that you have to foul continually. It means that you have to play a style of basketball that's really hard to play. And that's been our point the whole time. So can you come back and play that basketball on Sunday?
Yeah, Jaden McDaniels got into foul trouble a couple different times. I keep going back to Jamal Murray, too, man. Like, he made a concerted effort to pick it up a notch in terms of being aggressive and getting to the rim. He was knocking down some of those just patented fadeaway, step back, just create some space, Jamal Murray jumpers that we've grown accustomed to seeing in these big playoff games. Now, again, I wouldn't underestimate the calf situation here. He had a wrap on that left calf because it's been bothering him. He had 4 days to rest after game 2. He's going to have less than 48 hours before their next contest on Sunday. That's something to keep an eye on. Can he repeat the performance less than 100%? A couple other things, Tim, just kind of going through my notes from the game here. The Nuggets didn't commit their first turnover until like halfway through the second quarter. So they came out, like, as much as, yes, the Wolves clearly didn't come out with the same fight and punch as the Nuggets did. The defensive intensity and just the general clamps that we saw in game 2 were not the same and all those things. But Denver comes out, shoots 60% from the field for the first 3.5 quarters, out-rebounds the Timberwolves, which is kind of an effort thing, and doesn't commit a turnover until halfway through the second quarter. Shoots 57% from 3 before garbage time. Like, all these different things. You're not beating a team that does all those things and checks those boxes. Now, can they repeat all those things in game 4? I would bet against it. And again, these are the ebbs and flows of the series. Can the Timberwolves, the defensive performance the Timberwolves put up in the second game of the series was one of the great historical defensive games in NBA playoff history. If you look at some of the metrics and just the eye test, everything, that probably wasn't repeatable even coming back home game 3 games. So I'm looking for the things that are repeatable, the things that are sustainable. And if you go back over 19 games, you know what's sustainable and repeatable? These teams swap victories. The last 19 contests, the Timberwolves have 10 wins, the Nuggets have 9. They go back and forth. There's been blowouts both ways. There was a blowout in game 1 of last year's playoff series. The Wolves came back, got embarrassed, adjusted, made it closer, put up a fight. So this is the playoffs, man. Like you said, if you're already just like in an emotional tizzy, we're not even halfway through the bracket yet. Even if the Wolves do find a way to close this thing out, guess what? Welcome to the halfway point of the playoffs. Yeah. There's going to be blowouts both ways. There's going to be adjustments. There's going to be players who go off in one game who don't. Aaron Gordon was knocking down a bunch of threes tonight. Like, tip your cap. In some ways, tip your cap. I'm with you. I think the alarm bells really start to go off if Denver does it again in game 4, and now it's like, okay, you just lost all of your home court advantage that you built up.
Right.
But Denver still has to win 3 out of the next 4 games, and the Timberwolves have played them better than anybody in the NBA the last 2 or 3 years. So I am not ready to throw a towel in and say that Denver finally found something to. I know.
They're up 2-1.
But I'm hearing from a lot of fans are freaking out right now.
I know, because they're not used to this, or if they are, they think it's the Vikings and it's one game and you're done. Like, that's the thing, is you have to prepare yourself for a series. Like, this is a series. This is a best, and the Suns, in some ways, the Wolves, well, not in some ways, the Wolves flat out spoiled us and you in the first round because they swept the Suns, and it's like, oh, well, the Suns, they just swept them right out. Yeah. And then they won the first 2 games, and so they're 6-0, and it's like, oh, man, this is easy. Look at playoff series in this league. This is how they tend to go. They tend to have, heck, you know what? Look at the Cavaliers and Celtics. Celtics game 1. Oh, my God, this series, it's done in 4. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
Cavaliers in game 2. They blow out the Celtics. Oh, my God, now the Celtics. What's wrong with the Celtics? Like, that's the thing, is the overcorrections. And part of it's because there can be too much time off between games. I would say this. What I want to see on Sunday is, and I would I didn't run this past you, and I don't know if you agree. In my opinion, this was Ant's worst game of the playoffs. He had 19 points. It led the team. But, people think in game 2 here against the Suns, he didn't have a good game because his shooting was off. But as we discussed at the time, I thought he had a marvelous game because the box score, he did a ton of really good things. And, yes, he didn't shoot well, but he made up for those things. I felt like tonight, the shooting wasn't great. 19 points for him is just okay. But more importantly, he just didn't really have a great game. He didn't have a good game. And I think and I think he will too, I think the challenge now is, does Ant come back and have one of those games? Because, when the Wolves went into halftime of this game down, I kept thinking, okay, third quarter, Ant's going to come out and start to hit, and that's where the game will change. And it really didn't. Denver came out, made more shots, increased the lead, I think, at that time to like 22 points or so. So
yeah,
if I'm looking at this from just an objective point of view of what do the Wolves have to do themselves on Sunday, one is, yes, the defense needs to go back to being the defense that we have consistently seen for 6 of the 7 games the Wolves have played in the playoffs. But the other thing, I do think that you need dominant Ant to emerge because he just has the ability to get you back into games and carry you. And there's nobody else on this team. There are a lot of guys that could do a lot of good things. Nobody else can carry you like Ant can.
Let's turn this into not an official event line. We're not going to bring fans into the actual video stream here. We're kind of testing out our new setup at Target Center, and we don't want to overload our bandwidth here. But we will take some of your comments from the YouTube comment section on this live Flagrant Howls. Gabe Anderson says, Judd, stop treating this like a normal loss. We haven't been whooped like this since game 1 of last year. This wasn't just a bad night.
Okay.
Again, I don't think that this game, just because the Wolves whooped Denver more embarrassingly than Denver whooped the Wolves tonight. Both were embarrassing ass whoopings on each other's home courts.
Yeah.
But Denver absorbed theirs in game 2, took a deep breath, went back to the drawing board, came up with this response. The Timberwolves have done the same thing with other opponents. The Timberwolves got smoked 3 times in the regular season against the Suns. They took a deep breath. They went back to the drawing board, came up with a game plan to eliminate the Suns in 4 straight. Again, the Wolves match up really well with Denver. This was the best punch that Denver can possibly throw. Like, this was a championship, absolute Larry O'Brien punch that they threw tonight. Okay, you took it on the jaw. You got knocked out. Again, you're still up 2-1. Like, winning those first 2 games in Denver gave you the cushion. Even after that game, too, it's felt sort of uncomfortable all week to me. We didn't really talk much about this, but I keep hearing Wolves in 4, and it's fun to chant Wolves in 4, and the whole arena was chanting Wolves in 4 before the game started tonight. It's fun to throw the hashtag out on social media. We are all idiots if we really thought, even after game 2, that the Timberwolves were just going to dispose of this Denver Nuggets team in 4 games. Like, it was never on the table, sweeping through the Western Conference, sweeping this incredible Denver Nuggets team.
I thought the Wolves had a very good chance to win tonight, to be upfront about it. In fact, in a pregame video that we did from courtside, very nice being courtside as well, I predicted that the Wolves would win tonight, and I did not see this performance coming. That being said, though, the question was, how are the Nuggets going to respond? The Nuggets embarrassed themselves. They have players that clearly wanted to rectify that and absolutely did. But here's where I would say, and yeah, I get it. It's a playoff loss. It's a playoff drubbing, just like the Wolves drubbed Denver. So it's not a regular season loss. I get that. But I think the important thing to contextualize is this. Unless you think what the Wolves did in the first 2 games was just a complete fluke, these teams are pretty, it looks like, evenly matched. Now, I know the scores the last 2 games don't indicate that both ways, but that being said, because these teams can exchange punches, that's where I can't freak out yet. Like, if Denver takes it to the Wolves again, and then it's just clear, like, oh my God, the Wolves have it was a fluke. It was a 6-game fluke. Game 1 last year, the difference, in my opinion, is this. Game 1 of the first round against the Nuggets last year set a tone of, it was quite clear that the Wolves were competitive, but Denver was clearly better. That Denver team was better. They just were. And the Wolves were competitive. But you didn't come away from that series saying, man, the Wolves should have won it. You came away saying, well, they played hard, but Denver has a chance, and we saw it, to win a championship.
Yeah.
This to me is two playoff teams. This to me is two playoff teams going back and forth, and I think the Wolves have enough prideful players and certainly a style of play where they're going to come back themselves pissed off on Sunday, don't you?
Yes, I do. Again, like I should pull up the game log. I don't think they lost 3 games in a row all year. Did they? Did the Wolves lose? Now, they could lose 2 in a row, and that would tie the series. But in terms of like just completely getting put into a tailspin for multiple games, this team regularly bounced back after embarrassing bad efforts. I'm just going through some of the post-game quotes here. Chris Finch was asked about Jamal Murray not getting suspended for Game 3, and he said he never expected Jamal Murray to be suspended. It's the playoffs. Your thoughts on the idea that Jamal Murray never should have been playing in this game in the first place because he should have been suspended?
What type of mentality is that? I understand the frustration, and yes, he probably should have been. Okay, we can all agree on that, at least if you're a Wolves fan. But is that really the mentality? Is that really the, oh my God, if he had just been suspended, this wouldn't have happened? Like, my God, this is the playoffs. Well, okay, so let's say he had been suspended for Game 3, and Jokic still had a great game. There's no guarantee that you were going to win tonight, I guess. And the other thing, too, is, so, okay, in Game 4, he comes back and plays lights out then. Because he needs rest. Like, part of his problem is the calf. He needs rest. So let's say he had gotten it. Let's say they won. It's 2-1, and now he's had more than a week off or whatever off. So I guess I get as frustrated by the notion that, well, if Jamal Murray had only been suspended, I get as frustrated by that as some fans do by the officiating.
Yeah, I'm glad that he played because I don't want there to be any excuses, any asterisks. It's the playoffs. You're going to probably have to do something more than throw a towel and a heating pad on the court. I understand the precedent. Now the league is saying that players can just throw things on the court. Do I think by the letter of the law he probably should have been suspended? Yes. But I want the Wolves to win this series with Denver's best players on the court. I don't want it to be, like when Draymond Green got suspended for, was it Game 5 of the NBA Finals like 7 years ago? And the Cavs jumped in, won Game 5. Now we get to a Game 6. They were down, 3-1? And to this day, Golden State fans and Draymond Green and the players can say, well, I mean, the only reason why you won that series is because the league suspended me for Game 5. So I don't want, I'm glad that he played.
But you can't, shortcut the playoffs. That's my thing. Well, if Jamal Murray had been suspended for this game, and then maybe Jokic turns his ankle in this game, and he doesn't play in that, like this, you can't shortcut the playoffs. You're trying to win a championship. It's really, really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, man, another thing, too, people are asking on Twitter throughout the game, just people watching on TV, that people were saying that the crowd coming through TV sounded like it was dead compared to maybe the games against Phoenix. It's been 3 weeks since they played a home playoff game. I would say a couple things. Early on, before this thing got out of hand, before the Wolves were down by 20 points in the second quarter, I thought the fans were really into it. Every time Jamal Murray touched the ball for the first quarter and a half, people were booing him out of the building. So I don't know if the sound wasn't coming through the TV. Now, of course, when you're down by 18 points early in the second quarter or whatever the margin was, yeah, it was a little bit of a deflating feeling in here, and people weren't as raucous. Not to mention, I guess it did feel a little bit like the crowd was kind of burnt out from maybe a week of anticipation, and then the game doesn't start till 8:40 on Friday night. It was
and they've
people
been
were worked
drinking
up
for hours.
Right. People were worked up into a tizzy on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Now Friday's here. Oh, the game doesn't start till 8:30. Never mind, it's 8:43, 8:44. And then the Wolves get off to a bad start, and so it wasn't necessarily the A crowd that you would expect, but I still think this crowd, when the Wolves don't get behind by 18 points early on, I think this crowd is a huge advantage. In Game 4, maybe they can keep it a little closer so the crowd can stay in it a little bit longer.
I think it was 90% dictated by that. This crowd was chomping at the bit to be loud, and they were at the start. But when the game trended, starting really more so in the second quarter, when it started to trend toward Denver, yeah, the crowd got quiet. Who can blame them?
We're getting
I was surprised
hammered
they stuck
section.
around.
I think, okay, here's my sense, and maybe I'm just like gleaning from
Let's see that one again.
the comments.
Can you put that up again?
Yeah, let me go find Bo here. Hold on a second. Bo says, now we're making excuses for the crowd. The crowd was too tired. Murray was too rested. We're making excuses. Here's what I'm sensing from a lot of angry Timberwolves fans.
Oh.
A lot of people thought that they were going to come in here tonight and it was going to be a crowning of the Timberwolves, that they were going to win a 7-game series in Game 3. They were going to beat the Nuggets so bad tonight at Target Center, and the roof was going to pop off, and the Nuggets were going to throw the towel in literally and say, we don't even want to play a Game 4. You can just have the series. We bow down. Don't even play the rest of the Western Conference Finals, the NBA Finals. Bow down to the new kings of the NBA, the new Michael Jordan, Anthony Edwards. Like, a lot of people thought that it was just going to be that easy after the first 2 games of this series. And now that they get beat, I feel like people want heads on a platter. There was literally a dude a couple drinks in, right below us in the media row we were sitting in, that spent the entire second half yelling at the top of his lungs in the arena, like every bad possible word in the books at the Timberwolves bench. Like,
and I told Declan to shut up, and he wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what to tell you guys. Like, we're not firing Chris Finch. We're not lighting up Anthony Edwards for, like, they lost a playoff game. It was bad, but this is a 2-month marathon, and you're playing the best team in the world right now. Strap in for the long haul.
I'll take a shot at this one, okay? So, first of all, I'm not going to blame the crowd or the officials. The Wolves played a bad game. Like, I'm more than happy to say that. But I'm not going to make excuses because I'm not going to blame the crowd. The crowd helps if things are going well for the team. If things aren't going well for the team, the crowd doesn't help as much. But the Timberwolves won 4 consecutive games against the Suns. They were up 2-0 in this series, and they're up 2-1 now. If they blow this series and they go out in the next 4th, or now what? If they lose 3 consecutive games, they will be in for some very, very big-time heat. But in our jobs, I don't think it's wise right now. And you know me, man. You've known me for a long time. I love to melt down with the best of them. But in our jobs, at 2-1 Wolves lead, am I really going to lose my mind? What's going to happen if they lose on Sunday? What's going to happen if they lose 3 consecutive games? We got to let it play out. I'm sorry. Yeah. I know people want heads right now, and I know that they're pissed. And look, if you paid $1,000 to get in tonight, you got a right to be pissed. I go for it. Be mad. But as far as like what you're looking for from us, I don't think we can provide it until we have literally more context.
I agree.
The context of the series is not set at all. We've had one close game. Wolves won it, or I guess it's close compared to the rest of the series. And then we had a 26-point win by the Wolves and a 27-point win by Denver. So 3 chapters are complete. This book could be 7 chapters.
Yep. Need more information. Need to see Game 4 before I start freaking out. Now, for some tactical things or some things that just can't remain the same going into Game 4 if you want to win. Let's start with Karl Anthony Towns. He was white hot at the beginning of this game. He knocked down 2 or 3 huge 3-pointers. He winds up with 7 shots, 4 for 7 from the field, only 7 field goal attempts in 33 minutes in this game. You got to do a better job as a team. I'm not really even like putting it on him. I think they need to run some looks to get him. I mean, he was 4 of 5 from downtown. His shot is absolutely falling. His spot-up shooting is historically great through the first 2 series of these playoffs. You have to find a way in 33 minutes to unlock more than 7 field goal attempts and just keep that hot hand rolling. Anthony Edwards, too, I thought he settled way too much. Now, he did go 3 of 5 from down. He made some 3-pointers, but
I'm with you on
he
that.
shot 0 free throws tonight. I need Anthony Edwards. Now, there was a couple where he probably should have been shooting free throws, and he let it be known to the officials, but 0 free throw attempts? I need Anthony Edwards getting to the line 8, 9, 10, 12 times in these playoff games, just like he has at times against Phoenix and then the first 2 games against Denver. And then Naz Reid and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, a combined minus 49 in this game off the bench. So defensively, Gnaw and Order was not working as well as it did in the first 2 games of the series. Jaden McDaniels, too, was a minus 18. By the way, Cat and Ant combined a minus 64 in this game. So more shots for Cat. I thought Gobert just didn't look like Gobert. He clearly wasn't rebounding and impacting the game in the way that he usually does. No blocks for Gobert tonight. Very few neverminds if we were tracking that officially in the box.
Yeah, he
score.
really didn't have any. You're right. His impact was very, very small, felt like.
So, again, most of the things that could go wrong for the Timberwolves went extraordinarily wrong, and most of the things that needed to go right for the Nuggets went very, very right. And that's how you get a 117-90 ass kicking at Target Center tonight.
I'm with you on the Cat thing too, because Cat's shot right now is just so pure. It's so nice, and I'm sure that the Nuggets addressed him, and so they felt like he couldn't shoot it as much. But you can't go away from that. He's too good. He's too important. I'm also slightly concerned now that we're going to have some time off, and his adrenaline is going to go down about Nas' left shoulder that he banged up in the third quarter on the Jokic screen, because he definitely was in some pain. Got up. Yeah. Went down again at some point in time, too, I think, when he got upset with the official and got teed up. But anyway, that one is a concern, because the great thing about when they're playing well, the great thing about Jaden and Nah is you basically have 12 fouls to give with 2 guys that are the same guy. So, Jaden can get in foul trouble, and, okay, Nah comes in, and it's just okay, let's go. So there are some concerning things here. But, this is the adjustment thing, too. This is the adjustment. I would not be surprised at all if the Wolves are very privately on the phone to the league as well tomorrow to say, we play a certain style, and you might want to watch what Jokic is doing. Because while I do not like publicly using the officials as an excuse. I think there's very much a wise cat and mouse game behind the scenes. And if you look at what Jokic does to get basically free, he's fouling guys. Now, I don't think it does you a bit of good to bring that out publicly, but I think it's pretty smart to do, because I'm pretty sure after game 2, I'm going to guess that Mike Malone and the Nuggets organization called the league and said, what's going on here, right? Yeah. So turnabout's fair play there, because you do have to have it's not just the ability to play your style, but in Jokic's case, it's the ability to defend him. And it's no surprise, but he is literally very often initiating the contact himself. I don't know that that's a foul. That, in my opinion, playoff time could just be a no call, but I don't think that that's necessarily a foul on you if you're the opponent.
He is really hard to officiate because he's physical himself, but then opponents have to sort of size him up the other way, and the first cat foul, Jokic kind of initiates the contact, but then Cat on the second blow, Cat then leans in, and then Jokic kind of flops. It's just
the Gobert one though was a real tough one. Yeah, because he slams into Gobert. Gobert goes back and gets the foul called. I'm just saying those are the type of things that if I think you can specifically identify and send in or address.
Anthony Edwards is speaking to reporters downstairs right now. I'm just going to read you some of his quotes. "It's on me," he said. "I'll take the blame for this loss. I came out with no energy at all. I can't afford to do that for my team. I let my team down, the fans down." This is where the 22-year-old in him comes out. He wasn't terrible in this game, but it did look like he was a little lethargic in this game 3.
It's a perfect word.
And why are you lethargic in game 3 at age 22? And maybe again, some of it's he's talking to Malika Andrews, Good Morning America, the entire week. People are asking him about the Michael Jordan comparisons, and if he's turning on any national media at all, people are just giving him flowers. And I don't know, maybe human nature sets in. But my pushback would be, well, Michael and Kobe.
Yeah, it's
never really came out lethargic, but he is 22 years old.
Right, but why at home? This should be a time to absolutely, Friday night, national TV, playoffs, late start, you played great, It is sort of weird. This is one where, in very Zulgadian fashion, if I was Chris Finch, I would very much like to gather my team and say, gentlemen, we're going across the street. We're all going to stay at the Lowe's or whatever the hotel is there now. No one's going home. We're all going to be a team. We're a family, and everyone, including you, Gobert, are going to get a good night's sleep because you got a baby at home. And you're going to see that baby all the time, and you were there for the birth, which is just awesome. In fact, you missed a game, but now is a time. And Ant, you know what? You're sequestered as well. We don't need you doing. You're right, Phil. We don't need you being on national TV tomorrow at 7. We need everybody focused, because it did feel like, I will say this off Ant's comment, and he's not wrong. Lethargic's a great word, but it also didn't feel real focused tonight. And I feel like the way that the Wolves play, like when your calling card is the defense that this team plays, which in 2024 in the NBA is pretty unprecedented. Like there's not a lot of examples there, which is why we've talked about like the 1990s Pistons. I think focus is your biggest thing. If you don't have a total focus, I think it becomes very difficult, because then when the Nuggets get hot, you're sort of in trouble, or you are. So, yeah, I would like to see everybody in a position where they get all the sleep in the world, they're rested, and they come back here and they are totally focused on what the job is, because the job is difficult.
And I understand, too, that to kind of piggyback off this, that this is the first time in 20 years that fans have been able to enjoy something like this. And the players feel it from the fans. They feel the love. They're all on social media. The media that's asking questions is asking through sort of a prism of, oh, my God, can you believe this is happening? To me, there was too much of a feeling of inevitability after the Game 2 win, and it felt like too many victory laps being taken by fans, by media. I and we are probably guilty of this as well, but it's also like really exciting that they've rolled in and just swept the Suns and beat the brakes off the defending champs in the first 2 games. But the job isn't over yet, and the series is very much back in play now. So enough of the self-congratulating after a Game 2 victory that comes nowhere near closing the series out. It did kind of feel like people were taking victory laps, and the Denver Nuggets probably took note of that, I'm sure. A lot of whiteboard material, Wolves in 4 whiteboard material.
Oh, God,
for a very prideful team, you know.
Yep.
Some more from Anthony Edwards here. He said, they played well, man. They're the defending champs. We didn't expect this to be easy. This is what we wanted. It's fun. He added, there's no reason to be negative. They won 1 game. We're going to try and win the next game. It's the first of 4 games. It's not the first to 1. If it was the first to 1, we'd have already won the series. It will be all right. So Anthony Edwards, good at math. Talking to reporters downstairs right now. Mike Conley said, we don't blame the refs. We put it on us. And Conley added, this is a series, and we're going to have to fight for this one. So, yeah.
That's absolutely true.
You weren't sweeping these guys.
No. I'm hoping now, just as a fan as well of sports, and I mean playoffs in all leagues are just, for the most part, fantastic. I'm hoping now what we get, though, is we get the type of games, we get tight games again. We get close games. I don't need these, I won by 25, well, now I won by 26, right? Like I'm hoping Sunday, and I think it should be, because common sense just sort of dictates it will, should just be a close game. It should come down to the wire. Like that's what, each team now has its for lack of a better term, victory lap win. We won by 20 plus. We won by 20 plus. Yeah. And now I want to see this series, for however long it lasts, just turn into a really good competitive. You win by 5. You win by 6. You don't win. Because I think that's where it should go. And it's been sort of weird thus far, but when you look at it and the evenness in so many ways of these teams and the competition that's existed, at some point in time you would think it's just going to return to a normalcy standpoint where we do just get some really tight, close games. And I mean, I still like the Wolves' chances, but tonight was definitely a bucket of cold ice water on the Wolves in 4, which then, of course, towards the end of the game became Wolves in 5, which I think people should probably just sort of back off on, including us. I mean, that's cool.
We have no reference points to know what's going to happen here. And I'll say this. Sometimes this type of bucket of ice water, as you described it, can be a great thing. The Game 82 loss, end of the regular season, to the Phoenix Suns turned out to be a great thing because it was the fire that you needed to be lit to make the adjustments needed to come out with the requisite energy to just absolutely avalanche the Phoenix Suns, right? And so maybe this was the best thing that could happen, that they're going to go back in that locker room and say, well, okay, now we know, and now we can go forward here with a clean slate, with better energy, with a better strategy, and have Karl Anthony Towns shoot more than 7 times on a night that he is red hot from three-point range. So 40 minutes in here, we're going to wrap this thing. Any final thoughts from you, sports dad Judd Zulgad from Target Center?
Yeah, I think we're going to get a real tight one on Sunday. I think we're going to get a real tight game. I think it's going to be a good game. I think here's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see the Nuggets play like they did tonight offensively, but the Wolves play like they did defensively on Monday night. How about that?
Boy,
that would lend to a fantastic game, because you know what we haven't seen really. We haven't seen strength versus strength. We've seen my strengths going and yours is not from both sides, but we really haven't seen the Nuggets maximizing their offensive potential, quite frankly, because I thought in the first 2 games, and partial credit obviously to the Wolves, Murray was lousy for him. And tonight he was magnificent. But then when the Wolves play their lockdown style of defense, I think it could be great fun to see those 2 things actually firing on all cylinders against each other.
Yeah, I would just kind of go back to what I said at the beginning of the episode, which is now you know. This is what it's like, and it's been a long time, 20 years since the Wolves have been in a back-and-forth playoff series. In fact, that series against the Sacramento Kings, Western Conference semis back in 2004, they lost the first game at home, and then they were down by like 9 pretty late, if I remember 20 years back, in Game 2 at home, about to fall down 2-0. It felt like, man, the Kings just have the Wolves' number. Sam Cassell then goes on a heroic run at the end of Game 2 with the big balls dance, and they wind up winning that game. And but there's times in that series where it felt like, oh man, the Kings have figured out the Timberwolves. Oh no, the Timberwolves have figured out the Kings. And it wound up being a 7-game series, and the Wolves closed it out with a 30-20 performance by KG. This was probably always supposed to be a 6 or 7 game series, but Game 2 was just such a weird sort of kink in the algorithm that we didn't really know how to process it. But when I say now you know, Denver is still Denver. They're still the defending champions. They can still lay a beat down on you like this if you're not paying attention. And now it's a series. But you still have home court advantage. You still have a really good basketball team. You might even have the best player in the world, Anthony Edwards, when it's all said and done here after these playoffs continue to progress. We'll see. Can he put a dagger in Jokic in the next week and a half? We'll have
Deep
to
breaths,
see.
everybody. Let's take. See how good that feels.
This is fun, man. This is great. This doesn't have. Like, I feel
great.
like a lot of people took this as like, oh man, the house of cards came crumbling down, and this team is a fraud, and this team showed you their true colors tonight. No, that's not necessarily the case. Okay, if they get smoked in the next 3 and they lose this in 6, then we can have some difficult conversations. But this is the playoffs, man. The ebbs and flows of the playoffs, especially when you're playing a desperate defending champion that has no desire to go home.
And by the way, if you do win, there's still the Western Conference Finals.
And then maybe
so
the NBA
strap
Finals.
in again, and if you know, but I'm just saying, like, this is not the championship. If you play OKC or Dallas, it's also going to at times feel like the greatest thing on earth if you win games, and like your team is falling apart. So like this is just going to be a continue. I mean, the goal is to have the continuation of this all the way through for another round, and then a round after that.
Yep. Yep. So, deep breaths. Another game in less than 48 hours, and we will be live again right after Game 4 is over on the Score North YouTube channel. It's Flagrant Howls. He's the sports dad, Judd Zulgad. I am Phil Mackey. For Kyle Teige, Michael Grady, and Jim Peterson jumping on board on Flagrant Howls during the postseason. We'll talk to those guys after Game 4 next week. Thank you for hanging out with us. We're sorry the Wolves buzzkilled your Friday night, but strap in because this might wind up being a really long series. Thank you for hanging out on your favorite Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.